So this is my short video about unknitting. So what I want to do is I just want to demonstrate what I do when I make a mistake, because in knitting I do make a lot of mistakes, and being able to fix your mistakes is quite important. So imagine that I drop a stitch. So when you drop a stitch, you don't knit it, okay? And when you're working with thinner yarn, sometimes you don't notice that you've dropped your stitch. So you think it's travelled across to the other needle. And like I say, if you're working with a 4-ply or a lace weight, and if you're doing lace type work or work where you're knitting together multiple stitches, it can actually become quite difficult to see what you're doing, and it's often only much later that you discover that you've actually made a mistake, that there aren't quite the right number of stitches, that your lace pattern isn't working out properly, etc, etc. So when you discover, by the time you discover your mistake, it's actually not on the row that you're working on. Quite often it's on a previous row. So for instance, I get to the end, I'm looking at my knitting, which is always a good thing to do when you get to the end of a row or something, is to just look at it, and it's like, oh, I can see there's something going wrong here. Yeah, I can see there's a hole, and that often creates a ladder that can run all the way. So sometimes you can pick that up without unknitting. But let's just say we're going to try and get back to that. So we basically need to look at the knitting that we've just done and unknit it. So I'm going to go back to work on my purl side of my knitting. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my needle through that stitch underneath. So the stitch that I've knitted is on top here. This is the stitch I've knitted. So I knitted that into this underneath stitch. So I'm going to just find that and then pull that back onto my left hand needle, and here just going to free that up. So that's one stitch unknitted. You can always pull it down a little bit if you want to see that space underneath. And again, you go into that underneath one, and then you need to be very loose with this because it just needs to be able to come undone. So that's 2 stitches unknitted. I'm going to go in, move the next one onto my left hand needle. So I'm literally going back in time now. I'm unknitting all the stitches that I've literally just knitted while I was talking to you. So I'm going to do that all the way across. Okay, so that's unknitting on the purl side. Now I'm going to change over to the knit side. Although I'm using circular needles, I'm just going backwards and forwards. So now I need to unknit the knit side. So again, it's just very similar. I'm just going into the stitch below and releasing that stitch. Going in here underneath the stitch, catching it at the back and then pulling it off. And again, transferring those stitches over to the left hand needle one by one. So it's worth getting yourself some chunky yarn, and on your biggest size needles, casting on 10 or 15, and there we go. There is the culprit right there, and it's actually only dropped down by 1 stitch. So I'm just going to let it drop down another couple of stitches, because that's often what you'll see, is you'll see it well below. It's not just in the row below or the row below that. It can be all the way down there. So what you need to do is you need to pick those stitches up. You've probably heard that term. And the easiest way to do that is with a crochet hook. And I've got a crochet hook, a couple of crochet hooks. So this is my biggest crochet hook. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, without twisting, can you see that there? Without twisting the stitch, I'm going to pop that in, and then carefully I'm going to go to the stitch line above, and I'm just going to hook it through. That gives me that little V shape again, and then I'm going to go to the next one, and then I'm just going to twist it to pull it through, and then to the final one, and I'm just going to, oops, you see I've taken that stitch off there now. The last one here, I'm going to pull it through, and then once I've got all of them caught up again, I'm going to finally transfer that to my left hand needle, so all my stitches are live again, nothing is dropped, and I'm just going to continue knitting to the end of my row. So I'm knitting forwards again, to finish the row, and then we'll just have a little look. Yeah, and just checking the knitting. There might be a slight issue with tension, but look, that's pretty neat. You wouldn't necessarily know where the hole has been. Okay, so that is how to unknit and how to pick up a stitch. So do have a go. Let me know if you need any more advice, and I can see if I can demonstrate for you. Good luck.